So the idea of being in a workplace as a millennial versus a Gen Zer is interesting. Obviously, there are going to be differences, just as with any generation. Um, it's also very important for each group to understand each other's preferences and dislikes and expectations in the workplace. I think, in at least from my perspective, being somebody that's a Gen Zer, um, a lot of our differences, I think, stem from the fact that us Gen Zers have instant communication. We have social media, people can look us up at just a button's press. Um, we typically would expect someone to, maybe not even expect, but we would know that, like, under normal circumstances, that our messages, our calls, our emails would get immediately to the recipient. So that sense of someone can always contact you, someone can always, you know, assume that you could answer. I think that almost gives us a heightened sense of privacy, as in, we especially need our own autonomy, our own privacy. We need to have our own ability to think freely and be ourselves. I think that's maybe where our heightened sense of that comes from, because we're so used to kind of our personal space kind of being invaded and our boundaries kind of being pressed. I think a lot of that has to do with the instant gratification and the instant everything of social media and technology nowadays. I do know, obviously, back then, and 10, 20 years ago, you couldn't always just text somebody, or you couldn't always call somebody and expect them to answer. Obviously, back in the 90s, even, you're not going to email somebody and expect them to answer in 5 minutes. You wouldn't expect somebody to answer work emails on the weekend, and whereas nowadays, I mean, people will, I'll see bosses texting people on weekends, hey, can you come in for work today? I think a lot of that is where we almost feel overwhelmed, so overwhelmed by the fact that we're so readily, like, accessible and available, that we have our senses heightened. Like, we especially say, hey, like, we really actually value our autonomy. We need to protect it so people don't take it from us. We need a good work-life balance. We need freedom. We need a place that we feel comfortable in, someplace we feel confident. A lot of us also like very clear expectations, and again, maybe that's because we have this culture of convenience, of gratification. It's convenient if we don't have to spend hours figuring out a problem. It's convenient if we have easy instructions and know exactly what to do. So I think us Gen Zers, also with the communications and the technology aspect in mind, we're so used to texting, emailing, no face-to-face stuff. I think most people in my generation dread phone calls. I personally don't like them because I don't like not seeing people's facial expressions and body language cues, but besides the point, I think most of us, or many of us, are not used to that face-to-face communication. So I think that's something that Gen Zers will have to adapt to in the millennial workforce, and vice versa. But with those differences in mind, it is possible to work around them, not against them, work with them, so workplaces can flourish and optimize productivity.